Hello, and thank you for contacting Wave Support. I see from your clinical request that you're having some difficulty with this keratoconus patient with some unexpected overrefraction and some concerns over the optical zone in this patient. So if we look at the designs, because this cone is displaced inferiorly, you have a couple options. One is to try to use Wave to kind of go over this area and try to match it very precisely, or the other option is you're hoping to do is go to more of a spherical back surface. Well, let's just talk about the first option for a moment. What I like to do in these patients is when you're looking at this design, if we recall, the bottom lower right hand corner is the Wave interpreted in topography. So I like to set that back surface OZ, the red dot, somewhere around the middle of that cone. I don't like to go much below 4 millimeters, so I usually set a 4 to 4.5, and usually give about a millimeter or so difference between the red and the blue. That tries to allow for a generous landing zone between the blue and pink. I go over to freeform since it's inferiorly, since this cornea is asymmetric, and then we hit let Wave do its design. Under current settings, it'll design that lens. Sometime, and if you look, we got a nice back surface lens that matches this cornea very closely. You can also use this little aspheric design tool down in the right-hand corner of the Wave software next to the S logo. That little box, if you click on about a -0.05, that usually gives you a nice aspheric back surface. And if we look at the back surface of this lens, it's a very nice contour. One problem we sometimes run into with power, at least what I've noticed, keep in mind your refraction may not be quite perfectly accurate because that cornea is so contorted from the asymmetry. So sometimes when we enter a spherocylinder refraction into Wave, Wave is going to be very accurate in designing that lens, so you may get some weird optics. What I like to do in those cases is either leave out the refraction, and then by all means in the end use this little tool at the bottom lower left hand corner, or go to the trial lens data and enter in their prior rigid gas perm lens data with the overrefraction. Or if I don't have that, I like to put a diagnostic lens on all my keratoconus patients, just a known spherical gas perm lens, again overrefraction, so I have the base curve and overrefraction data added into this little tool, and I find that almost all the time gets me real close to an end product for this lens. So that's one way to approach this lens if you're going to use the power of Wave to make more of a free-form back surface to match that cornea. The other option is if you're doing a spherical back surface, as you're hoping to do to minimize the to make it a less complicated optics. Keep in mind when you look at this design, try not to get too centered on looking at this design or the lens layout from this upper right or the lower right cornea images. What you really want to look at this lower left image, and this shows you a nice back surface. If you keep in mind, most traditional gas perm lenses are going to have a little larger optical zone. Posterior optical zone, that is. So if you look at this Wave design, I set this back surface at about 5.5 or 6, and if you look at that, puts you outside the cone. So I like to put it somewhere just outside the cone, and again leave about a millimeter or so between the red and the blue. Let Wave do its design, and you come up with a spherical back surface. And really what I'm looking for, not so much how this line relates to the green line, because we know it's not going to be perfect since we have such a displaced cone. Instead, I look at this lower left design. I'm looking for a nice smooth transition zone down through here, and that'll create a back surface spherical design. And then again, adding in your overrefraction data using that little tool, or trial lens data, which could be the patient's prior lens, to add that in here, and that'll adjust the powers accordingly. So that should get you back on track with that one. Same thing if we look at the left lens. I did a quick design. I think this is your most recent design that you had in the patient. What I'd probably do if you are looking at a free-form design, I'd probably let Wave just do a little more work with that. And what I did, again, I went to a little smaller back surface optical zone. I tried to place the red dot somewhere close to the center of that cone. Again, I don't like to go much below 4 personally. And sometimes just a rule of thumb, I try not to go much lower than the pupil. Keep about a millimeter or so difference between the red and blue, and that allows a more generous landing zone. And you'll see we came up with a lens that has a very nice back surface. It looks pretty nice all the way around. So this lens I would anticipate would work very nicely on this patient. Adding in the overrefraction. Again, if you want to go spherical, I would keep that back surface OZ larger. In this case, maybe go out to about 5 or 6 on the red dot and take the blue out to about 7 and define your spherical lens and then just watch the back surface on this lower left design. Well, hopefully that'll get you back on track. I wish you well with these cases. As you know, with keratoconus cases, all the rules kind of go out the window, but it sounds like you're right on track. I wish you well, and thank you for contacting Wave Support. Have a great day.